This is Working for Progress, a podcast that connects us through conversations about how we craft our working lives and make progress. We'll be joined by our communities from Tribe Porty and Keystone. Tribe Porty is a community co-working space and creative hub. We are full of entrepreneurs, social enterprises, freelancers, charities, and SMEs. Keystone is the other social enterprise which supports women to reimagine their working lives. We do this by providing a holistic approach to business through courses, programs, mentoring, group coaching, and events.
Welcome to today's conversation. I'm Alice, the community manager at Tribe Porty.
And I'm Dani, founder and director of both Tribe Porty and Keystone.
Here at Working for Progress, we're all about connecting good people, sharing their stories, their challenges, and the progress they make for themselves and for others. We hope this podcast challenges your ways of thinking and inspires you to work for progress.
Working for Progress starts with simple pleasures, finishes in awe, and meanders through career journeys in between. Today we have Osbert Lancaster, a sustainability champion and director and co-founder of Realize Earth. Before we get started, do you want to just describe what you do? I wanted you to do that yourself because I think you have lots of hats that you wear.
Yes, I've been discarding hats rapidly in the last few years and really focusing down. As you say, I'm director of Realize Earth, and we're specialists in leadership for sustainability. And that's because what we've found is there's obviously a huge need to do sustainability in all sorts of organisations, and there's lots of expertise and stuff around how do you actually do carbon accounting, how do you work out your carbon footprint, how do you do a whole lot of stuff, the technical sustainability stuff. Where there's something that's really missing is, well, how do you actually bring people with you? How do you get people on board? How do you make your colleagues excited about this? How do you get people involved and, getting stuck in and doing stuff together, working as a team, working effectively on this stuff? So that's what we do.
Nice, thank you. Fits very well with kind of our theme around value-based work and working for progress. We're going to wind back to more about you, though, and start out with some simple questions. Can you tell us 5 simple pleasures?
Ooh, one of them has to be walking the dog. Food, love food, good food. Cooking as well, it's the same thing. Reading, a lot of reading. I don't know if it's a guilty secret, but a lot of crime fiction.
Nice.
as well as more intelligent stuff. And there's a lot of interesting stuff in crime fiction as well. Other good stuff. Oh, the sea and the hills. That's probably about 5 or so. I've lost count.
That's nice. Thank you. Great. So, wondering about the kind of values that you live by. I know that comes really strongly through your work, but how do you make sure your work embodies those values for you?
Yeah. Well, when I saw that question on the sort of prep email, it's like, oh. So I've done a lot of work in the past with values, explicitly with values, and there's a whole sort of social science around social psychology of what actually are values. And lots of people sort of pick out innovation and stuff like that as being a value. It's not a value at all. And so I thought, well, I'll just go back and think, well, actually, what are the sort of and I thought I'd pick out 3 values from the 58 values that this particular approach to social values that I'm involved with uses. And I thought I picked out these 3. And so the first one is helpfulness, working for the welfare of others. And these 58 values are actually been found to be they're values that everyone, or rather, all cultures across the world hold these values. And different people hold them to different, as being more or less important, but they're all recognised by different cultures across the world. So I think it's really interesting that these are sort of real values you can actually sort of track down and we all have. So helpfulness and curiosity, just being interested in what's going on, and then the third one I picked out was being part of nature. So which is not just intellectually knowing that we are we're part of nature rather than something else. But it's emotionally feeling we are part of, feeling I'm part of nature, rather the living part of the living world, rather than the sort of has a lot of sort of, I guess, mainstream culture traditionally would have us as seeing humans at the sort of this apex of creation. We're masters of the universe in control and dominating nature. So yeah, those are my 3 values for today.
I love that. I love that you work from 58 sets of values. Do you think that, I'm going off piece a bit, but do you think that's becoming more and more common, the kind of talking around values? I just think back to when I first started working. I don't think we spoke about values in our work so much, but I realise the kind of work you do is quite value-based, but what's your sense? Because you work with a variety of people and organisations.
I actually work a bit less explicitly with values now than in the past. We used to do a lot of sort of workshops with different organisations and community groups and stuff to help them really sort of form together and say, well, what are the values? What is it you care about? How are you going to embody them? What's that going to look like in practice? Now that tends to be much more sort of, for me, it's like much more in the background as like an assumption. You don't need to necessarily speak it. You just get together and work on it. I suppose with the question of like, is it more prevalent and more stuff? I think definitely it is. I think probably the word purpose is probably the one that sort of is floating to the top rather than values. People are just like wanting something meaningful in their life and thinking, well, I've spent all my life as a marketing director selling people crap they don't really need, which rots their teeth or whatever, and making shareholders. And it's like, and you think, well, and you speak to them, they say, well, I've been doing all that. Like, but when I was at university, I was an activist with Greenpeace. I was like climbing oil rigs. Like, what happened? I had a mortgage. I had children. Okay. And then people say, actually, can I use those skills in a different way? Can I get back and do something I really care about? And that's happening all over the place.
That's really nice to hear. Really nice to hear. Just thinking about your helpfulness value. I know maybe they change through time, but I'm just wondering if you can pin that to an experience that is important to you, or curiosity. Any of those three, really.
Yeah, I probably could have pulled out any other three as well. So those are the three that came to the top today, I suppose. But yeah, I think I've always had a sense that whatever I was going to do, it needed to be something that was worthwhile. That was what worthwhile meant. It was like relevant and helping other people, helping nature, the environment, doing good stuff. Originally, I thought I was going to work in overseas development and help people who didn't know what they were doing to, do farming and all that sort of stuff. There's a whole range of stuff wrong with that view I had at the time when I was 17 or something. But I've moved on from that. But that sense of like wanting to do something worthwhile in the world is still with me. But where that came from, I think it probably came, from a large extent from my parents, both of whom were anthropologists, and part of which meant that I spent a lot of my childhood in the Middle East, in Jordan and Saudi Arabia, and living among the Bedouin, living in a black goat hair tent in the desert, and having a complete and utter, being exposed to a completely different culture. At the time, as a child, I just thought it was perfectly normal. It was like, you'd go to Britain, back home, and you paved in one way, you paved in another. But looking back on it, I think that was like this sense of, my parents are always interested, in well, how do people live? How does this economy, this society actually work? How do people interact? What's important to them? What matters to them? So they'd be like, discussing the conversations that I've had over the day with different people. They're into, they're sort of basically all their field work. They'll be discussing that non-stop. It's like one, like, oh my God, just shut up and talk about something normal. But that just sort of soaks in. It's like, well, those are the things. To be interested in is like, how does stuff work? How do people make a living? How do they interact with the environment? And I guess as from all of that, there's an assumption that one does something that's worthwhile, and it's about other people. I think that's a very strong part of the culture in that part of the Middle East and those people at that time. Maybe changed now. That was whatever 40 years ago or something. But a sense of we're together. We're here for each other. Belong to something. That's
strong. I mean, I can imagine that kind of young exposure, and your parents both being anthropologists. What an amazing, even almost unconscious level of understanding of the world, and how that plays out in you now. Really interesting. Back to kind of working scenarios. Do you have a worst job that you've had to date, or maybe most random job?
I think I was thinking about that. It started off being random, then became quite interesting. It was my sort of my first real job after university, and I'd gone down to London because my then girlfriend, my now wife, was down in London. She was doing a postgrad course. I went down to hang out down there while I thought about what the hell I was going to do. And so I got a temporary job with a garden centre in Chelsea, a really sort of posh, snobby garden centre in Chelsea, just off the King's Road. And so I was sort of doing deliveries and loading the van and unloading geraniums and stacking, watering plants and stuff. But it was for me, it was a really sort of weird experience, to introduction to a complete other world of the super rich. People coming in and like saying, I want that piece of furniture and that piece of furniture and that piece of furniture, and I'd write it all down and do it, add it all up with a calculator, because those were the days you did that sort of thing. And I said, yeah, that's £750. So that's fine, they said, and just handed me the platinum whatever. And it's like, wow, this is a really different world. So that was a real sort of, that's that. But also, having never really been interested in business or never really thought about business before, I also sort of got a real sort of buzz out of this sense of, whoa, you put stuff out and people come and buy it, and it's like, whoa, it's like there's a real buzz around that. And so I think that sort of, it really helped me. Not that it didn't really sort of take me into being a sort of like wanting to be that sort of business person, but it's like understanding that there is a buzz from that sort of stuff has been really helpful to me in future work.
Absolutely. I think that's why exposure is so important. If you never see something different, you don't know it's out there, and you don't know how it makes you feel. It could turn you on and turn you off, but all that's information, isn't it? Yeah, I love it. It'd be good to hear about the biggest risk that you've taken in your working life to date, and maybe talk about why that was a risk or what felt scary. Yeah,
so, and that's pretty easy to pinpoint, actually.
Okay.
So I sort of, after the garden centre thing, I did an MBA and became an economic development consultant, and worked in Eastern Europe, helping Eastern Europeans work out how to become capitalists, which I'm not terribly sure was a great idea. But yes, that was what I was doing, that sort of work. And then I moved into working, largely to get back to working in Edinburgh rather than having to commute to Glasgow, but working as a business advisor with SMEs, small and medium-sized businesses in and around Edinburgh, helping them, grow their businesses and stuff. And it was fine. But I got around that time, I sort of got more and more interested in what we now call sustainability. Wasn't really a big word back then, but it was just like the environment and the economy and how all that stuff hangs together. And that was when there were these really, I can't remember, was it the G whatever, but it's like some of these really early protests, around these global summits, saying, well, why are we going for endless economic growth? Why aren't we addressing basically what we now call well-being? That got me really interested in that, and really thinking, well, hang on, why am I growing the local economy and small independent businesses? It's a good thing, but there is this bigger picture behind that, how the economy works, how society works, I hadn't really thought about before. I got really curious about that, and ended up sort of being in touch with a group of people at Edinburgh University at a small department called the Centre for Human Ecology. And that was like a real eye-opener of all this sort of radical thinking around society, around environment, around the economics, and lots of amazing academics and activists and sort of speakers from all over the world coming there for events and conferences and things. I wow, I hung out there and I was like, wow, this is amazing, and I really wanted to get into that. And so I can't remember exactly how it worked, but I sort of managed to wangle it. So I managed to get some reduce my hours doing sort of business support stuff, and started volunteering with the Centre for Human Ecology. And then eventually managed to raise some funding to do some, from WWF, in fact, to develop a business and sustainability project, which allowed me to essentially stop working for the business development stuff and work just on with the Centre for Human Ecology, which by that point had become an independent NGO. And yes, that was sort of the big jump into NGO world and sustainability world. And you built that from nothing. Is that you co-founded it with others? No, it was part of Edinburgh University, right, okay. And then it was sort of spun out, we say politely, for basically sort of being closed and campaigned to keep it open, and that failing, and then people setting it up as an independent NGO essentially. So I was involved in that for the next 10 years or so. Okay. Eventually being director of that, and then after being got pretty much burnt out with fundraising and managing and all that sort of stuff. But that was the big jump, was leaving what you knew before. Yeah. Kind of on that note, I'm curious your thoughts about scale of businesses, and it personally, I always feel like there's always a push for growth from the top down.
And I get it on an economic kind of way, but it's not always the best way. I just wondered, just because you're in that world, do you have some thoughts about that?
Yeah, and I think it is changing, and I'm not an economist, and I'm interested in economics, but I don't understand like the nitty gritty of a lot of that. But I'm told that basically the way the economy works, particularly if you're a listed company, so the mechanics of the stuff just means like if you don't grow, you lose value, and people want to sell your shares, and the directors get sacked. I mean, that's just how the system actually works. Yeah. So for some organisations, I think that sort of need for growth is sort of built into them by the system. But I think for a lot of smaller companies, those that aren't listed in particular, I think the assumption of growth as always being what they should be aiming for, I think that is starting to shift. I remember when I was working in business development, the big economic development agencies at the time, the Scottish Development Agency, and then whatever Scottish Enterprise it became. It was like the people there were so rude about in smaller businesses that like just wanted to do, make a decent living, and work locally and stuff. And they were like, they're just lifestyle businesses. It's like sneering at them. It's like, I think that really has shifted. There's been a real shift there around recognizing that is a perfectly valid approach to running a business. How you can, whether the economics and the market allows you to do that, it's another question. Sure. But yeah, definitely, things have shifted there.
That's good to hear. I'm glad to hear. Yeah, I guess anything you'd go back to or make changes of. I like to hear the kind of progress. Obviously, it sounds like there's a golden thread for you in terms of looking at different cultures, looking at different ways of existing in the world and how we hopefully make this world a better place. Is there anything you would go back and change, or any important lessons that, I don't know, that stand out? I want to hear that and share that with people that are listening, particularly around younger people that are thinking about their career journeys.
Absolutely. So I suppose particularly people earlier on in their career, in fact, anyone who's like thinking about, I want to do sustainability, I wouldn't say don't do what I did, but I think that's not necessarily the best option for lots of people, because lots of people think, I want to become a sustainability specialist, and then you sort of become a sustainability specialist. You do your masters and whatever. And I've taught lots of people doing masters on sustainability as a teacher at university as well. And it's like, then they're sort of just become that sustainability specialist, they're trying to find that job. But actually, very often, you can actually have much more influence by working in whether you're working in marketing or finance or, whatever it is your skill set is, by bringing your concern around sustainability, your values and stuff into that work and trying to change things from the inside. Because so many sustainability people I speak to, they're like saying, I'm trying to change these people who've got the important jobs, the ones that have recognition and power, but they're just seen as sort of the sustainability specialist who's trying to stop the company doing all these, making money and trying to make them be good rather than successful. And okay, that's shifting, I guess, at the moment. But I think there is something around, don't assume that being a sustainability specialist is necessarily the way to go. But I think in terms of what I would have done differently, I don't think at that time that was the right thing for me. But I think one thing I would have done differently is, but I'd take a much more business-like approach to my career, especially after leaving. Because when I left the NGO, I became an independent consultant. I joined up with someone else. We worked together, and I've worked as an independent consultant, either in partnership with someone else or by myself, or a couple, for ever since then, for the last 12 years. But I never took a sort of a conscious business-like approach to that. Like many self-employed people, I sort of, bumped and bounced from one job to the other, and word of mouth and recommendations. And I worked, did a huge contract with the Edinburgh University, helping them develop their sustainability strategy. But and then the end of that came to an end. That work then dried up. I hadn't been developing any other work. Other universities weren't interested. They said they were using their internal resource. It's like, okay, I start again. I started doing, so I think thinking about that applying a much more focused sort of approach to business development and marketing, and thinking about it as a business rather than just me doing some interesting work for some interesting clients, I think would have been a good move, a smart move.
That is interesting to hear you say that. You needed you for yourself.
Possibly, yes.
In a kind of... focused out kind of way, maybe.
Yeah,
I think that's really good advice. And do you take a kind of 5-year plan for yourself, or 10-year plan? Do you think about that now?
No. Cause I know I've got this really. I know. I just know that I want to be working on this stuff, and so just definitely a really clear sort of direction of travel, and I think I'm not a great fan of sort of goals and big complex plans to get there, because really all you can do in reality, things change so much. It's like have a sort of a direction of travel. Know your values, know what you're trying to do, how you're going to apply them, and then think, well, what are the next steps that I need to take me on that journey? And you can spend months coming up with clever plans and then putting them into practice. By that time, everything's changed.
It's true. It's true. I'm just putting that back to you because you had mentioned it.
It's more around, I think my sort of being business-like, I suppose, is much more thinking about from a marketing perspective, or what is it that people actually want? Because I think this is something I find, I've seen it in myself, and I've seen it in lots of environmentalists and sustainability advocates. Me and they get passionate about aspects of sustainability and the environment, and you think, well, we believe this is really important. You should too. We'll tell you more and more facts about how awful it is that all the whales are dead, or whatever it is. And strangely enough, people don't get over. They go, either they go, that's terrible, don't tell me anymore, it's really scary, or it's like, what the hell are you on about? So I think it's thinking, well, what is it that people? What I've found in the last, particularly focusing on the work I'm doing now, it's like I know perfectly well that when you start having conversations with people about what it is that they care about, what matters to them, you discover in that conversation that people do care about all sorts of stuff. They might not call it climate change. Might not be worried. Might not be going on a climate march, but their children or their grandchildren have been doing that, and they're thinking there's something not good. Something not good coming down the road towards my family. And you think, well, what can I do about that? I'll just keep quiet about it, not think about it. But if that's someone who's in a position of within a business, they've got an organisation of some kind, they've got the potential to actually think, well, if you can engage that interest, get them going, I could do something. It's not just about, no, I don't want to become vegan, that's what else can I do? Well, actually think, okay, well, how can your business contribute to this? How can you shift to what your business does? You can influence your business, you can influence your colleagues, the staff, you can start influencing customers and suppliers. So I think if you can tap into what people are already interested in, and then make those links between how they can act for the greater good and their own stuff that matters to them, there's huge potential there.
Is that kind of how your work is focused at the minute? It's entry points for everybody, and it's kind of a whole everybody on board kind of approach wherever you're at in different ways?
Our real focus is on supporting people who are leading on sustainability in their organisation. And what we're finding is there are more and more people who are doing that who aren't necessarily sustainability specialists, but they've just taken that on. And while they have, these days there are lots of, great guidance and schemes about how to do net zero planning and stuff. But what they don't know is, it's difficult. Well, how do you do that in a way which brings people with you and gets people interested, and get senior colleagues on board, becoming supporters and allies rather than sort of barriers to progress. And there's because of the, I guess a lot of what we do is around bringing the social science of how does change happen, how do people change, bringing that into sustainability, which has generally been a very sort of technical, scientific, sort of hard science, life sciences sort of focus to it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That's a good place to come back to, isn't it? To make long-lasting change. So, final question. Can you tell us about or guide us through an experience that left you with the feeling of awe? And if that doesn't come to mind, if you have an example of experience a state of flow.
Yeah, so I was thinking about that, and I thought, yeah, definitely the state of flow thing was the one that really sort of bubbled up to the top. And a few months back, I was having a conversation with somebody. It was actually like a Christmas drinks thing for Institute of Directors. We were having a chat, and what came up was this idea that working on sustainability should be fun. Because so often it's sort of seen as, it's sort of doom and gloom, and there's a hell of a lot of bad news out there. But at the same time, there actually is lots of light. There's lots of really great stuff happening. But I suppose what I'm thinking is not so much like that sort of out there, but it's what happens in the interactions between the people working together. And see, I think what I've found is that, when I've been working with a small group of people on a sort of something we care passionately about, and it's going well, we're working well together, the people we're engaging with outside of that are getting involved, becoming supportive of it, the change we're looking to create is starting to happen. That's really powerful. So after that conversation, I sort of did a bit of research, and there actually, we've all heard about the sense of flow, and Csikszentmihalyi talking about that, and it's all around sort of sports people and musicians and all that. It's like, apparently, and I couldn't quite dig out the full reference, but apparently there's another aspect of flow, which is actually what he was quite interested in very early on in his career, which was this idea that actually flow generally happens in groups between people. It's when they're working really well together. This idea of group flow, and yeah, that I think is really powerful, and that's something I'm really interested in, sort of working. How do we do more to cultivate that amongst people working on sustainability? And I suppose my particular instance of that was one of the things we do is we run retreats where we take people into wild parts of wild nature. Not that there's any real wild nature in Scotland, but into the Highlands, and spend a week, really remote remote glen in the Highlands, and people spend most of their time outside and doing lots of nature connectedness stuff and exploring sustainability in a very, very different and very experiential way. So me and my two colleagues, we're facilitating that, doing that last spring. That was the last time we ran one. And just, that was a real sense of flow, because for me it was like, yes, the week's planned out. We know what we're going to be doing roughly. But every evening we sort of get together to debrief and what's been happening, and what's coming up for the different participants. And we get together the next morning. We go out and we've tweaked the plan a little bit. We've responded to what's going on. Like, is it going to work? Does it work? And we do what we're going to do, and people are coming back, and people are sort of taking part in the next exercise, and they're talking and feeding back about what came alive for them, and they're going, that was really powerful, that was really good. You're going, yes, this worked. There's those little tweaks and those changes we were making together that works, and we're facilitating in a group, and we're sort of, one person's leading the conversation, one of us facilitators is leading the conversation, and the other person is sort of keeping an eye on the rest of the group and what's happening, and you're sort of noticing that someone's a bit quiet or whatever, and you think, so you say, okay, so so Alice, what would you like to share what you've got? And it's like you're just sort of doing this on the hoof sort of facilitation, and when it just comes together well, it's great. Lovely.
That sounds lovely. I love that idea of kind of, I suppose, connecting with themselves, connecting with the natural environment, but then finding that connection with each other, and then that feeding into their sense of connectedness to this planet at the same time. And that must strengthen what you're trying to create. I love that. That sounds kind of such a perfect way to get people to care about this world a little bit more. But I think that's what we're lacking. We're lacking that rewilding connection with ourselves through nature and with nature. That's really nice to hear. I hope you're going to do more.
Absolutely, yeah. definitely, and that's another core part of our work. It was put on hold a bit because of the pandemic, obviously. So we're getting back into that again now. But that sense of nature connection is a big part of our work, and it was quite interesting the way you described what you were what we'd been doing at that retreat. Because I don't think I'd used those words, but you talked about connecting with yourself, connecting with the rest of the group, and connecting with nature, and that is exactly what we're setting out to do. Those are the words we use to describe what we're doing there. And it's really powerful. and it has a huge range of benefits for the individual, for the group, for society, and for the planet.
Yeah, I think it's the health of us as a whole. People, place, planet, everything, and I feel like we need more and more of that, because we are quite disconnected a lot of the time, as I'm sure you are aware of in your work that you do.
Absolutely.
Anything you want to share with us in terms of something you're working on just now, or excited about, or want to let people know of?
Yeah, well, we're working on all sorts of things to do with the sort of stuff I've been talking about. But one of those, the thing I particularly wanted to share was I've also started a podcast.
Cool, good.
So now that is Leadership for Sustainability. And it's all about how people can, very sort of practical advice around how to, for people leading on sustainability, how to develop and lead sustainability initiatives which get results and make a difference in the world. And you can find out all about it at realize.earth/podcast.
Grand. And we will connect people in our links and bios and show notes as well. Great. Any questions from you, Alice? I know you've probably been thinking about lots over there.
I think something that just came through in this podcast that I actually really like is you started off by saying one of your values is curiosity. And at first I was thinking about the word curiosity, and I was like, I've never really thought of that in terms of being a value before. I think of the word curiosity as a trait or a personality trait. And it's a powerful thing that I think we could all use when we think about sustainability. I think when we think about sustainability and climate change, it's very doom and gloom, it's doomsday, But also when you're only projecting negativity, you lose your audience because you get scared and you don't want to spend your days thinking about something that you're scared about. So I really like that your approach to sustainability and your approach to thinking about climate change is actually, here are the good things. Let's connect with nature. Let's be at one with it again. But actually being curious in the world in a positive way that can then create sustainable change. I think that's a really nice thing.
Yeah, I think just to sort of pick up on that does take us around full circle, because one of the, this work around social values, so social science of social values and how they actually work was really, really influential on my career, I suppose. And I got into that through an organisation called Common Cause, Common Cause Foundation. You'll find them online, and they were looking. The guy who set that up, Tom Crompton, was looking at, well, how can we? There's all this social science buried in journals about how do social values work? What does that mean? How do we use them to promote good, essentially? And he sort of took that and started trying to translate that into stuff that people can actually use, and you can boil that right down to essentially say, you can simplify, there are these 58 values, but you can simplify that right down to saying there are two sort of groups of values. There's one group of values which are around looking out for yourself, self-interest, and the other group of values around being compassionate and caring for others. And that all these values they're all natural, they're all part of being human, they're all useful at different times. Looking after yourself and your close family is often a really good and sensible and important thing to be doing. But if they get out of balance, if we find that we have, if we spend all our time in that really selfish place, what we find is that our compassionate values suppress. You literally cannot be selfish and compassionate and caring at the same time. It's either one or the other. And what this work from Common Cause shows, and I was actually working I was involved in that as a Common Cause ambassador in Scotland, along with a few other people promoting this work. But what that work shows is that because our culture, through the media, through sort of government policy and so on, it basically assumes we're all selfish. It's like carrot and stick are the only way to get any people to do anything. It assumes that status is really important. All of these things make people essentially reinforce the worst of human nature, and then that suppresses these compassionate values. So this is about how do we need to rebalance that, and that is about essentially, first of all, recognizing that actually most people are caring and concerned and compassionate and about nature and other people. Though they don't necessarily talk about it, but they actually are, caring and concerned. But that's sort of hidden by the noise of media and government. But recognizing that, and then actually just doing all we can to live that in our lives and to demonstrate that and to show it and make it a normal, natural way of going about things, which often isn't the case in organizations in businesses where it's all about status and success and so on.
I love that. That's a really beautiful ending as well. And it's been so nice to hear your story more in depth, and what an amazing kind of contribution to working for progress in terms of lots of small groups, big groups, organizations, people, and for the greater good of this beautiful planet that we only have one of, right? So thank you for your time. Really appreciate it.
A lot of these things I don't think about until someone asks these questions, so it's always good fun. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much to Osbert for joining us today. If you would like to find out more about Realise Earth, you can reach them via their website, which is linked in our bio. To hear more about Tribe Porty and Keystone, you can find us on all social media platforms. Please head over to our website and subscribe to our newsletters, which includes monthly blogs to provide helpful insights into how we craft our working lives. This has been Working for Progress. We hope you join us again.